Very special book today. We have How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. Now, Dr. Seuss is famous because he decided that certain books that little kids were using to read were super boring. So he started writing books that had a lot of rhyming words in it. Some books, like Green Eggs and Ham, only have 25 different words in it. So if you knew there's 25 words, you could read the whole book. So he did a lot of fun stuff for reading. He also sometimes would make words rhyme funny, or to make words rhyme, he would kind of change the end of the words, which is kind of funny. So here we have How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. His real name was Theodore Grizzle. And if he was still alive today, he would be like 116 years old. Okay, so How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Super cool about his illustrations, though, is these ones are in black, white, and red. All right. And this book was first published in 1957 for Teddy Owens. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all was that his heart was 2 sizes too small. So, super cool. Christmas season rhymes with reason. Just right rhymes with too tight. Reason of all rhymes with too small. Okay, there's a lot of rhyming in that book. All right. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown as the warm, lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming. I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow, he knew. For all Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. Oh, and then, oh, the noise. Oh, the noise, noise, noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, noise, noise. And then the Whos, young and the old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They'd feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. For every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of the Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. For 53 years I put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming, but how? And then he got an awful idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there's none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Some up. And then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, "Giddy up!" And the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All the windows were dark, quite filled with snow. All the Who's are all dreaming sweet dreams without care when he came to their first little house on the square. "This is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once, for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the chimney flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. "These stockings," he grinned, "are the first things to go." Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant, around the whole room, and he took the whole present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorns, and plums. Then he stuffed them in a bag. Then the ginger Grinch most nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimbley. What's a chimbley? Chimney. Remember how I told you he would switch words around to make them rhyme? Does chimney rhyme with nimbly?
Yes.
Nope. Nimbly ends with a B-L-Y. Chimney starts with an N-E-Y. So he changed the end of chimney to chimbly, so it would rhyme with nimbly. So that's one of those things that he plays with words. And he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimbley. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. And then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. "And now," grinned the Grinch, "I will stuff up the tree." And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove. Then he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who. Little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. He stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know that old Grinch, he was so smart and so slick. He thought up of a lie, and he thought of it quick. "Why, my sweet little tot," the fake Santa Claus lied, "there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here." And his little fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And then Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup. He went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was a log for the fire. Then he went to the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still in bed, all the Who's still a snooze. Then he packed up his sled. He packed it up with their presents, their ribbons, their wrappings, the tags and the tinsels, the trimmings and trappings. Then 1,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. "Pooh-pooh to the Who's," he said grinchishly humming. "They'll find out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open for a moment or two. Then the Who's down in Who will all cry, boo-hoo." That's a noise grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand on his ear, and he did hear a sound rising out of the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, were singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And that's what happened. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he, himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. All right, so there's our story, how the Grinch stole Christmas. And when we have Dr. Seuss week in March for his birthday, we will read a whole bunch of his books. All right.